Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Religious discrimination abounds as employees are fired and evicted for being, quote, too religious. I'm Matt Barber, Director of Cultural Affairs with Liberty Counsel and Associate Dean with Liberty University School of Law, and today for Matt Staver. And joining me on the phone is Harry Mihet, Senior Litigation Counsel for Liberty Counsel. Harry, thanks for joining us on Faith and Freedom today.
Thank you, Matt, for having me with you.
Well, Harry, you recently, a couple weeks ago, argued before the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and requested that a trial court summary judgment be reversed in an employment and housing discrimination case. The facts of the case, essentially in a nutshell, Daniel and Sharon Dixon were fired by the Hallmark companies for managing an apartment complex and were then evicted from the apartment for being, quote, too religious because they displayed in the rental office a stained glass artwork with flowers and the phrase, quote, consider the lilies, which of course comes from Matthew 6:28. Quickly, if you could, I've summarized the facts of the case, but if you could give us a little more on what actually occurred and how the oral arguments went there before the 11th Circuit.
The Dixon's case is remarkable, Matt, because it showcases the religious intolerance that exists in some circles. In this case, as you pointed out, the Dixons, had been working for Hallmark for several years in one assignment and a few months on the most recent assignment. They displayed this picture in the office throughout their tenure, and not once did anyone complain that the picture was offensive or discriminatory in any manner, which is, of course, not surprising. However, on the date in question, their supervisor, Christina Saunders, asked them if the picture was a reference to Scripture. And the Dixons responded truthfully that, yes, consider the lilies does come out of Matthew 6:28, at which point their supervisor ordered Mrs. Dixon to remove the picture immediately. And when she hesitated, when she said, well, let me go get my husband, who is a co-manager of this property, and the three of us should discuss this together, their supervisor removed the picture on her own, and 5 minutes came in. She said, don't worry about it, you're both fired. And looking at Mr. Dixon, she said, you're too religious.
Unbelievable.
And so, yes, that was the discrimination claim that the Dixons took to the federal court in Jacksonville under Title VII and Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act. And even more incredible was the federal court's conclusion that the Dixons didn't have a case, that they did not deserve to go to a jury. And so most recently, 2 weeks ago, we argued this case on appeal at the 11th Circuit in Atlanta, and we asked that court to give the Dixons the day in court that they deserve.
Okay, now, Harry, just for a moment here, I want to play devil's advocate. I know you are as well. I am a big free market conservative, and I certainly believe that a private company has the right to have its office space and its facilities decorated as they so choose. Is that the case here? Don't they have a right to decorate the employer here, the office space, as they see fit?
Well, they certainly do, Matt. And, had this employer come to the Dixons and told them, hey, your picture is too ugly or too big or it doesn't fit the decorum of the office, that would have been a completely separate matter. But instead, what happened here is the supervisor first found out that Matthew 6:28 was a reference to Scripture, And incidentally, she testified that had Matthew 6:28 referred to a painter named Matthew who painted the picture on June 28th, the picture would have been entirely appropriate and fine, thereby revealing her religious animus and bias. But then after she confirmed that this was scripture, she ordered it to be removed, and when the Dixons hesitated, she fired them, telling them specifically that they were too religious. And so, yes, while an employer has the right to decorate its office space as it sees fit, the law is clear that an employer cannot fire employees for being, quote, too religious.
Okay, now you often hear people mistakenly in an instance like this saying, well, the Dixons' First Amendment rights were violated. Now, please, can you explain, you mentioned Title VII and Title VIII. The First Amendment doesn't really apply here. First part of the question, can you explain why that is? And then can you give a brief explanation of what Title VII and Title VIII, how they tie into this?
Yes, the First Amendment to the United States Constitution guarantees all of us several freedoms, including the freedom of speech and the freedom to exercise our religious convictions. However, the First Amendment applies only against state action, which means that it prohibits a government from infringing those freedoms. Here we have the Hallmark companies, which incidentally, it's not the greeting card company. It's a separate company that is engaged in apartment rentals. So we have a private actor, a private employer that is taking these actions, and so therefore the First Amendment does not protect the Dixons against them. However, there are laws in this country that do protect employees from discrimination by their employers, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is precisely such a law. Title VII under that act essentially states that employees cannot be fired because of their religious beliefs, and it imposes upon employers an affirmative duty to accommodate religious beliefs when they can be reasonably accommodated without undue burden. And the Dixons contend that Hallmark failed to accommodate them as it reasonably could, and also that it fired them because of their religious beliefs. There's also the Civil Rights Act of 1968, and Title VIII thereunder prohibits apartment managers or apartment companies, any company that provides housing, from evicting people because of their religious beliefs. Here, the Dixons were not only fired, but also evicted, and therefore Hallmark violated that law as well.
A very good explanation. Thank you for clarifying that for our listeners. Now, quickly, in about 60 seconds, if you could, where does the case go from here, Harry?
Well, we had a great day at the 11th Circuit. Oral argument went exceedingly well for us. At one point, Hallmark's counsel actually conceded that had he been asked about the picture at the time of the firing, he would have advised his client that the picture could stay on the wall, which was somewhat eye-opening for both us and the court. So we expect that the court will reverse the trial court and will give the Dixons their day before a jury, and we are confident that when a jury hears the facts of this case, it will vindicate the Dixons' rights, and it will hold that Hallmark, or any other employer for that matter, can simply not engage in this type of blatant discrimination.
And it sounds like, from what you say, based on the opposing counsel's interpretation, that if the court does find in favor of the Dixons, I would be surprised, certainly, if this case were appealed. Well, folks, at Liberty Counsel, this is what we do. We have some of the best constitutional lawyers, such as Harry Mihet, in the country, who are standing up and defending your religious liberties. We stand up in defense of innocent human life. We stand up to defend the natural family and natural marriage. Go to lc.org to learn more about what Liberty Counsel is doing, or give us a call at 1-800-671-1776. Ask for the book Original Intent by David Barton. This will really help to solidify in your mind our founding fathers, those who framed the Constitution, who drafted the Constitution, what their perspective was on the so-called notion of separation of church and state and religious liberty. Go to lc.org, or again, give us a call at Liberty Counsel, 1-800-671-1776.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.